Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Illustration Department podcast. My name is Giuseppe Castellano. In this podcast, I talk to folks in illustration, graphic design, publishing, animation, and other creative fields about their work, the lessons they've learned, and the bumps and bruises they've experienced along the way. In this episode, my guests are award-winning book creators, Erin and Philip Stead. How can artists and podcasters stand out in a noisy world? The answer, simple as it seems, is in the humanity of what we make. Among other topics, Erin, Philip, and I talk about how illustrators can know if they're going in the right direction. We explore the importance of owning our artistic, read human, mistakes. And Philip and Erin share advice on anti-cynicism and anti-conformity, respectively. I hope you enjoy our conversation.
How long have you been doing this?
A while.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's been a minute, right?
2019?
Yeah.
Summer?
Since
2019?
just before the world collapsed.
Before the world collapsed. Yeah, look at that.
Right when everybody started needing even more podcasts in their life.
I guess so. Yeah, you'd think my numbers would be better by now. No, I'm kidding. It's fine. Yeah, you guys are going to be like episode 350 something.
Wow. That's incredible. Good for you.
Thanks. It's not as labor intensive as it might seem. It's a little labor intensive, but
getting out of bed in the morning is labor intensive
my
for
God.
me. So
Phil, we might need to get into that. Oh, where did my coffee go? Oh God, it's on the other side of the table. Hold on one second. I need my coffee. I can't do this without coffee.
I understand.
Be right back.
We are quiet.
is that a gain issue?
That might be the beginning of the episode. Me walking away, getting coffee. As I was preparing for this, I wondered if my wife and I could work together as author-illustrator. We work together for the illustration department, but we have very different roles. It works well for us because if she made one note, like she does all of the scheduling and that sort of like back end stuff, I do all of the meeting with illustrators, podcasts and stuff. And so neither of us really comment on what the other one is doing, which is great. Because if she made one note about how I drew anything, I would fix on it for days. Like, does my wife think I'm an awful artist? Am I an awful artist? Like, we would blow deadlines left and right. How do the two of you work together creatively and not allow any disagreements, let's call them, to leak into your relationship? Erin, let's start with you.
First, we blow deadlines left and right. I mean,
constantly.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I'm sure Neil appreciates that.
Especially since having a kid, I think that's been.
Yeah.
But also, I think it just, sometimes books go well and sometimes you think you have it and you really don't. I don't know, Philip, what do you think?
I don't know. I always kind of push back at this kind of question and kind of reframe it because
okay, go for it.
The question is usually posed to us as though it's like some huge challenge we must have on a daily basis.
But that's not how he posed it.
Yeah.
No, but that's how we often get it, though.
Often we get people in a signing line that are like, why,
I can't stand my husband. Right? How could I possibly work with him? That sort of thing.
And you're describing separate roles. And I think that
Yep.
what you've described actually happens within the studio, but it can happen quickly throughout the day. We can shift.
Swap roles.
Yeah, swap roles throughout the day. And as far as Phil looking at a drawing I'm doing and commenting that it's not right, it is still, 20 some years in, devastating. But but I also think most of the time it's devastating because somewhere I already knew that it wasn't quite right.
Yeah,
and you just have a buddy saying like, well, you're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
I think when our daughter was very little and we kind of had to swap time in the studio more often, where we weren't literally together working next to each other. I felt a little bit unmoored actually, because then the only voice you have creatively next to you is your own inner critic. Right. I think a big service that we provide each other on a near daily basis is when one person's having kind of an emotional meltdown about what's going on at the desk, you can just turn to that person and say like, am I okay here?
Right.
And
real or fake?
Yeah,
real or fake?
Is this real or fake? And like sometimes it is real, and you actually need a person to say like, you're messing up. Don't continue to mess up for the next 3 days. Just stop now.
Yeah.
Right.
That's really valuable. Or it could be positive, like, no, actually you're down an uncharted path maybe, but it's the right path. So just keep going.
Yeah. A lot of illustrators that I mentor, I would say most of the issues that arise stems from the one question: am I going in the right direction?
Yeah.
With everything, drawing, painting, querying, am I going in the right direction? And 90% of the time they are. They just needed somebody to say, yeah, you are going in the right direction. You're not wasting your time.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, just yesterday in the studio, in fact, I was having kind of a low moment, and it's with a picture that I've enjoyed making for the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
But an experience that's really common with me is that the early stages of a picture, that's when I'm the most excited about it. And it's as you're bringing it to a conclusion and you're just kind of taking care of those like last little bits and bobs that you have to do to make the picture function as an illustration, as opposed to just, a painting or something. That's when I start to lose the joy at the desk.
Okay.
And I start asking myself, like, is this even worth it? What I'm doing?
Yep. Is it worth it? I think that every creator asks that question weekly, maybe even daily. Not daily. That would be bad.
Oh, welcome to our studio.
Yeah, we go through phases. I often though will, even if I don't mean it every day or not every minute of every day, I think being an illustrator, especially a children's book illustrator for myself, is one of those things where if it goes well, you have a pretty clear understanding of why it was all worth it. Because when you make books, they're not really yours once they're published. They're the child or whoever's checking it out at the library or at the school, or the experience between the grown-up and the child. So I feel oftentimes like I get to cheat a little in the worrying about whether or not it's worth it, except that we live in such a noisy world, and I think that can get me down.
Oh, yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about that later, probably.
Okay.
Phil, you said you never saw yourself as a writer in the early going. So did illustration come first, then writing? And how comfortable are you in referring to yourself as a writer now?
Yeah. So I am not comfortable at all calling myself a writer.
Even today?
Even today, yeah. So I have always self-identified as an artist from the earliest age, age 3 or 4. As soon as people started telling me that I could draw well, that was my identity, and it always was. I enjoyed writing sort of as a side hobby through college. Studied poetry and other forms of creative writing. It was just kind of like this thing I could do, but it wasn't a thing that I honestly thought that much about. Art is the thing that's preoccupied my mind for as long as I can remember. But being able to write allowed me to have more control over the things that I would be able to illustrate. Yeah. It meant that I didn't have to wait for projects to come to my doorstep. I could create from the ground up and pitch my books that way. What was surprising to me over the years is that more and more people started to identify me from the outside as a writer first and an artist second. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that I wrote A Sick Day for Amos McGee for Erin, which is our most recognizable book.
Sure.
As the years have progressed, I think I have become comfortable with the idea that I'm a picture book writer specifically, because I think writing for picture books is incredibly specific. It's an incredibly specific skill. And I think I have honed it to the point where I'm okay saying I am a picture book writer. But when it comes to what the day-to-day life of a writer really is, I still can't imagine myself doing that forever. Yeah. If you were to take one thing away from me, if you took art away from me, it would be devastating. If you took writing away from me, I could deal.
Ooh,
that's interesting.
I don't know if I believe you.
Well, part of it is that writing is such an unpleasant activity for me.
Hey man, welcome to me making art. Like I just feel like when I hear you talk about some of this, I don't know. I mean, we're being recorded, but sometimes I feel you must be a little afraid of allowing yourself to be called an artist or an author, that rather.
I am.
Yeah.
I've been painting. I've been an artist since I was a teenager. I'm close to, the big 50 here. And to this day, if I'm at a party and I'm, being introduced to someone who doesn't know me, and they'll say, "What do you do?"
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
It's the worst.
Like, so I just say I'm a teacher.
Yeah. I also tend to lie if somebody asks me.
Airplane pilot.
But, yeah. Well, or I don't know. It just depends. But even after, so Amos won the Caldecott. That was my first book.
Yeah, it was.
And even then, if somebody said to me, "What was your job?" I would have shied away from telling them the truth. I think it's strange to self-identify as an artist, except for that I happen to be married to someone who is happy to do it. And I'll admit, when we were teenagers, I would think to myself, well, if he can do it so confidently, then what does it say about me? I know my chair's speaking.
That's fine.
Anyways, yeah, I wonder sometimes if you deny it about yourself because
I think
it wasn't your plan, I guess.
Maybe, yeah, it definitely wasn't my plan A, but part of it is that when I imagine like years into the future, spending every day of my life writing, writing to me is such a different activity than art making. When you're writing, you have to sit down, you have to be completely antisocial, and there is absolutely no physicality to it at all. You are existing completely inside of your own noggin. Whereas, the last 2 weeks I've been working on some collage art and I haven't been writing at all. And the experience is, it's all physicality. You're standing up, you're moving around, you're cutting, you're pasting. You can listen to anything you want to listen to. You can engage with other people that are in the studio while you're working.
Right.
In that way, it has almost nothing in common with the act of writing at all. And because I'm naturally predisposed to things like, anxiety, depression, etc., the act of writing can be a little bit fraught for me. And art making can be fraught in its own way, but the actual physical act of doing it, I think, is healthier for me. I will say, though, a lot of times I'll say that I don't want to identify as a writer, or that I just flat out don't identify as a writer. Yeah. But I do take writing incredibly seriously. Maybe in part because I'm not as confident in it as I am with the thing that I've been doing the rest of my life, right, which is art. I really, really sweat every single word in a way that I don't sweat my decisions artistically, and maybe even in a way that I should.
Phil, I think you and I are we hang out at the same club, apparently, because I also live with depression. It's much better now than it used to be, but I had a couple of years there where it was pretty scary. And so anxiety, depression, self-doubt, all of that stuff is amplified in my brain for reasons which, we won't get into. I never thought of myself as a writer. I never wrote anything. I didn't study writing at school or any of that stuff. It was all illustration until just a couple of years ago. And now I write consistently, constantly, daily for Substack and for myself. And I write bios, I write articles about, how to be an illustrator. I have so much more fun writing than I do drawing or painting.
Wow.
So much more fun. All that self-doubt, that inner critic, gone. Nowhere to be found. It's very, very fluid. Whereas with drawing and painting, the minute I put down a line on a piece of paper, my inner critic's like, nope, wrong line. You lose.
Yeah. Well, I'm on your side.
Yeah, Erin's very much on your side. She's the constant inner critic while she's drawing. I found that my artistic inner critic is heavily dependent on
likes on Instagram.
No, on media, on what I'm using. So the more
right.
I've recently returned to collage after having not really worked in collage in almost 20 years.
Yeah, my favorite medium.
It was absolutely my favorite. I did my first 2 books in collage, and I really thought that was my path. And then I just kind of deviated and didn't make my way back for a really long time. And I've spent quite a bit of time in the last couple of years trying to figure out why am I not enjoying art making in a way that I used to, I actually started to realize that there's something inherent in the moving around of cut and torn paper, where the decisions don't have to be permanent until you really feel like, okay, now I'm ready for it to be permanent, until the moment that you actually put the glue on the paper and it goes someplace. But even then, you can still cover it up. So it's almost like, we don't work digitally in any way, so we don't have an undo button. But in collage, there's a little bit of an escape hatch.
Sure.
Whereas, I just did, maybe close to 90 illustrations for my novel, all in black and white, pen and ink. And the first mark that goes down, sometimes you know the second you've put a mark down that you have to throw that piece of paper out. You know that feeling?
Oh my God.
It's like, well, that line's dead.
Every time, dude.
Yeah. I actually enjoy working in pen and ink when it's going well, but it is hugely, hugely unforgiving when it's not going well.
I have one pen and ink drawing I did of my backyard, which is just woods. And I love it. It's small, maybe 5x7 at most. It's very good, if I do say so myself. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because anytime I think about my drawing abilities or my pen and ink technique as being quote unquote bad, I just remember that drawing exists. I pulled it off and I can pull it off again. And that's what I tell my inner critic, especially when it's loud. It's not all the time, but it's enough to, tie my shoelaces together when I'm sitting down and trip me up when I stand up.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Speaking of inner critic stuff, I was talking to an illustrator yesterday about the fact that when I was an art director, I never looked at the finished book. An editorial assistant would give me my copy, I'd shelve it, and get back to work. Same goes for the podcast. I listened to an episode once to make sure I didn't mess anything up with editing mostly, and that's it. We'll start with Erin, then Phil. The question is, do either of you look at the however many dozen books or so that you've done at this point over the years just for the fun of it?
No. I would give you
well said, Erin.
Yeah,
well
I would give you a longer answer, but I don't have one. No, I don't.
Phil?
Well, I mean, this is kind of a downer answer, but I tend to, if I'm
going
back,
we'll go up from here. Trust me.
No, I am going to go up. I'm going to go down, then I'm going to go up. So,
and then Erin, I apologize. I cut you off. I think you were in the middle of a thought.
No, I'm going to keep thinking about it. It's okay.
All right, keep thinking.
So we keep one long shelf of all of our books here in the studio, just for reference.
I think I saw a photo of it.
In all the various foreign languages and things. If I end up going to that shelf and pulling something down just for the fun of it, it's usually to torture myself with feelings of regret about lost opportunities.
Yes.
Or,
Same.
Why did I do it this way when I could have done it the other way?
Exactly.
So that's the downer answer. However, of the two of us, I tend to be the person that goes to schools and meets with kids. I do it, periodically throughout the year. Usually in the month of March, I spend a lot of time in schools. And that allows me a really healthy experience of reliving my past books, in part because it really, to steal from Kurt Vonnegut here, the books become unstuck in time, where all of the books are current books to the children. So if it's 20 years old, if it's 10 years old, was published last week, it doesn't matter to them. And they remind me that the books can be engaged with on a completely different level than how I tend to engage with my own books, where I'm just opening them up and I'm just critical about everything. But they're engaging with them as stories that either function or don't function as stories. And what I'm often reminded of in those experiences is that the choices that we've made tend to make books that do function well as stories, even if there are pages where the illustrations aren't perfect, or, we would have figured out rhythm or pacing a little bit different, something like that.
Right.
The stories still hold up.
Erin, have you thought about an extension to your answer, or are we good?
Yeah, no, I think it piggybacks off of Phil's actually, which is that after my hard no, it's that there's a feeling for me of when the book comes after I take it out of the box and think, oh, look, a book. Because I still try to remind myself that is a really lucky experience that I get to have,
Sure.
once or twice a year. Mm-hmm. But then once it's on the shelf, it's really not mine anymore. And what Phil's saying about telling stories in front of children, there is a really happy disconnect that you get to have when you're presenting a book that you made in front of kids, because you realize that this experience they're having actually it's what you hoped for when you were making the book, but it has very little to do with the day-to-day of what it's actually like to be an illustrator. When you're conceiving of a picture. It's very much a cross your fingers and hope for the best experience before it gets to a kid. And so once that book is a book, then I feel like it's not mine anymore. And whether or not that's actually true, I think it helps me not live with bricks attached to my shoes about all the things I could have done better.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Because it's out. It's too late.
Hearing Phil and Erin Stead say what you guys have just said over the last 10 or 15 minutes, I'm hoping for illustrators listening is actually like the biggest relief ever. Because as you guys know, what you see sort of like on your screen, what you see out in the world, what you read in reviews, and it all sounds great. None of the inner critic comes up, none in all the interviews and everything you guys have ever done on like PW or whatever. I haven't read everything, but what I have read and what I have listened to hardly touches on that stuff. And then I talk to illustrators every single day who are just overwhelmed, preoccupied with my work isn't good enough, it didn't end up the way I wanted it to end up, and all these other things. But to hear the two of you say stuff like that, and other folks on my podcast, Jules Feiffer was on my podcast and talked about it. I mean, there's so many other, Brian Lee's, all these other greats who are like, yeah, dude, 100%. I don't see myself as a writer or an illustrator on a day-to-day basis, or I struggle with inner criticism or whatever. That's all natural is what I'm trying to get at here. That's the point. It's totally normal to feel these things and still move forward.
I think we're entering an era where everything can be perfect. Everything can be so slick right now.
Sure.
That I find myself readjusting my perspective on my own handmade mistakes, because at least they're mine. The other thing that is it feels recent, but it was 9 years ago we had a daughter. It is almost a curse to have parents who can draw when you're a kid who's learning how to draw. That's what I've learned, because her life was not seeing a parent make a drawing, giving it their best, and still kind of falling flat. Like, if you ask Phil and I to draw something, probably we can draw it, because that's just what we get paid for. Exactly. We do it every day. And so the answer all the time was, why can you draw this so well? And I would have to say, well, I draw every day. We have hundreds of picture books, and we would read to her all the time. And there was an element I realized that was happening when she was looking at some of these books that seemed absolutely flawless, where she would start to feel like, I can't do that because I make mistakes.
Right.
And when she would see art that wasn't quite right, but that we all still think is like a classic, that's when she would really connect. And I thought, okay, maybe there's something here. Maybe there's something here that I can chase where I don't have to beat myself up. Right. That a line isn't perfect, or that I got that perspective on that drawing wrong. And instead it's something that it opens the door to connection, because it's not quite right. It's still made by a person's hand.
Yeah, I think in my own practice, it gets kind of muddy, because I've always been really drawn to illustrators and artists where there's a sort of an inherent shagginess in what's going on. So like John Burningham or William Steig.
Fantastic.
Where you can... Or Jules Feiffer, who you brought up. I mean, Jules Feiffer is definitely like one of my heroes. And I honestly can't imagine him not feeling confident when he does, because the end result, like the art that we would see like in the Phantom Toll booth or something like that, it's full of flaws, but they're like the most confident flaws you'll ever see.
There's so much joy in his line.
Yeah, and Burningham's the same way.
I can't do.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm constantly beating myself up over if a line or some other artistic mark is honest enough on the page? So does it have like a naivete to it while also being exactly right?
Yeah.
That push-pull of those two things is what drives me crazy on a pretty daily basis.
Has anything tripped up artists more than perfectionism? I tell illustrators the way to sort of circumvent all of this is to fully grasp the concept that what we imagine, the final product is never, ever what we imagine. Is it better? Is it worse? It doesn't matter. You can't really compare it to what you imagine because what you imagine is incomplete. So stop comparing it to what you thought it was going to look like and acknowledge it for what it is. So that's step one. Step two is instead of looking at other people's work and being jealous or feeling like inadequate, appreciate the fact that that art exists. Thank God that art exists, right? Because if it didn't, we would live in a world where that art didn't exist, where all good art didn't exist. I would rather there be more good art out there than not. Wouldn't anyone, right? So instead of looking at other people's stuff on Instagram or, I wish I could paint like N.C. Wyeth, but I'm not going to beat myself up over the fact that I can't. I'm going to thank the gods that work exists, that he existed, that any artist, John Singer Sargent, whoever, Beatrix Potter, whoever. So that's a healthier way of looking at other people's work instead of saying like, well, I can't do that. Yeah, that's fine. No one asked you to.
Right.
They can. You can do your thing. They can do their thing. And the third thing on the mistake front, I like to see mistakes as signs of humanity. Like our mistakes, it's not even the right word. I don't even know what the right word is, but a mistake isn't a mistake. It's a sign that you're human. It's a sign that it's real. It's like a bookmark to our past is how I like to see it. Believe me, like this is very new. Maybe this is age talking or I don't know what it is. But for many, many years, decades, I would be so bent out of shape if I found a mistake from something I had done previous. Even the podcast, in the early years, I would listen to an episode and go, oh my God, that sounds awful. I never looked at it objectively. I always saw it for all the flaws and never for the fact that it existed. I'm happy that this stuff exists. And I think that's a good way of not processing, viewing art and writing.
We've had a couple sort of guiding principles in the studio since the very beginning, even when we started really young. But I think in some ways I was almost more fully formed at 25 than I am now in my mid-40s.
I gotta say, this whole thing, you're sounding very midlife crisis today.
Yeah, well, tis the season.
Erin, it is me. I'm telling you, it's me. I'm actually feeling a little guilty that the tenor of this conversation is where it is. No, it's all me. I'm telling you, it's my fault.
If you saw the weather outside our studio right now, you would realize that there was no hope for us today.
I told Erin that I dropped our daughter off at school and the landscape looked like an Anselm Kiefer painting.
Oh my God.
But anyway.
Same here. It's like very foggy.
Yep.
It's just really dreary, which I actually love. This is my favorite weather.
I don't mind it so much, honestly.
It either has to be full sun, no clouds, which is peak weather, or summer specifically, or all clouds, fog, and chilly.
Yeah.
Those are my two favorites.
Jack the Ripper weather.
I wouldn't describe it like that, but moving on.
So anyway, I was saying we've had a couple sort of guiding principles in the studio since the very beginning. And one of them is that, we make everything by hand, not because we hate artwork that's not made by hand. In fact, a lot of our favorite books over the last 20 years have been books.
I've had some element.
Yeah, I've had some element of some digital component, but it's just not what we do. But one artifact of handmade work is that there's going to be mistakes that you can't always work around. Mm-hmm. At some point you have to say, I've been working on this picture for a week. I can't start over again. So that mark has to stay. Mm-hmm. The guiding principle, though, has been that we want all of the mistakes to be our mistakes, not other people's mistakes. Mm-hmm. So, as we're interacting with art directors, editors, whomever, we listen to criticism and we listen to opinions, but we don't act on them if we're not comfortable with them, because we really And it's not because we think we're perfect all the time. It's that if it's a mistake, we want it to be our mistake, because our mistake means that even through an imperfect work, you'll understand something about us as people. Mm-hmm. And so when you pick up the book, it will really feel like it was made by a real person, like you were saying. Mm-hmm. I think what we've been struggling with for the last few years, though, is that, as the world has gone more and more online, and it's become easier and easier for people to make fully digital work, mm-hmm. and easier also for the publishers, because artists will work faster for them. They can take, direction at any stage of the process. It's made our work look more and more like outsider work. And so as we look at the work that's being made, everything looks so clean, especially if you're interacting with it on a platform like Instagram or something like that.
Sure.
And our work, we can photograph it, we can put it on Instagram. It's never going to look as clean as work that was made for that platform. And so that adds like a whole new layer of self-questioning.
Oh, it shouldn't. I mean, it's valid that you're feeling that, but it shouldn't.
I think the questioning, some of it is, how do you continue to tell people about your life's work in a world,
your oeuvre?
Yeah, in a world that is so information flooded, and we are like one tiny drizzle drop in a rainstorm.
That's part of it. I think part of it too, though, is that we always I've said that I don't identify as an author. I actually don't identify as an illustrator either, as weird as that sounds. I've always, when pressed, I say I'm a bookmaker.
Yeah, that works.
The final piece is not the piece that's on my desk. The final piece is the book that somebody gets to hold. Mm-hmm. But that's a physical object, right? And for somebody to really understand the choices we're making, you really have to engage with it.
Get the book.
Yeah, you got to engage with it physically.
Like when I complained to college kids about looking at stuff online.
Yeah, and the digital world is becoming more and more the real world to a lot of people. And I think I'm not quite sure always where I exist in that space.
I'm happy to stage a rebellion at this point. I think the conclusion I'm coming to that has been good for me mm-hmm. is that this is an incredibly difficult time to be an artist. I'm lucky because I got a break, 15 years ago, and so I get to still be an artist. But when I'm talking to people who are trying to start, it's hard. This is a very strange time as far as publishing atmosphere, and there are more agents than ever, and there's a lot out there.
That. Yeah.
And then you have this whole new technology coming in that is basically grifting your ability, right? So mm-hmm. whatever you can put out there, it can steal.
Yep.
And so when I talk to kids in college who definitely have a look on their face of, what do we do? Because this was my plan. I can only say now that I'm starting to really lean into the humanity of what we're making.
That's the answer.
I think if you were to ask me when I was a kid, I would have told you I want to polish my hand out as much as possible. Mm-hmm. I softened up a little bit in college when I realized that really wasn't something I was fully interested in. But now, the way my hand makes a decision is my own.
Yeah.
I know there are programs out there that will think that they can copy that, but the myriad of experiences I've had and the reasoning for why I might make a color choice or something else about a story that fake human can't conceive of. Mm-hmm. And if we can just lean into that and make sure that we're still out there and having experiences with each other, then I think we'll be okay. But it does mean that you have to kind of nestle into your flaws, and I'm interested in that.
I've only drawn using Procreate once ever in my life for about 20 minutes.
I've never used it.
One of the first things I did was I drew a circle, and then the program fixed my circle.
Yeah, drawing assist. Yeah.
And I was so repulsed by this interaction that I had with the machine. I was like, who are you to tell me that my circle wasn't exactly what it needed to be? Like,
exactly.
I felt protective of this mark I made in the same way that I do, like, if someone were to tell my child that something that they made wasn't right.
But if you are 18, 19, 20, you don't have that response right now. I think you're more, I certainly would be. I think if I were 19 now, I think you wouldn't necessarily always have the confidence to say, I don't need that perfect circle.
They don't. And that's I think, the bigger point maybe here. And I hear it from not 18, 19, 20-year-olds, but from 30, 40, 50-year-olds, illustrators who are trying to, quote unquote, break in, which is a term I don't really like, but let's just use it. Does it have to be perfect? Does it have to be digital? Does it have to be this or that? And they're always thinking about how other people will consider their work and less on how they would consider their own work. And they're trying to erase their individuality, their idiosyncratic ways of mark making. I mean, it isn't just about the medium you choose or the techniques. It's literally your own physicality, like how big your hand is, how you hold the pencil. All of that is part of the DNA of the art. Again, I want to be very clear here. This isn't about like anti-digital or digital versus traditional. You can work digitally, you can work traditionally, you can work however you want. There's no such thing as perfect. It's a mirage. It's an ever-moving goalpost. It doesn't exist. It keeps us from just being ourselves and appreciating and embracing the fact that we are who we are as artists, and that's what the work should showcase. That's your work is a reflection of you as a person.
I think, to clarify my own feelings about digital art, I don't make it because I don't like making it. My brain shuts off. Yeah, I dislike sitting in front of the screen. I like getting dirty. I like moving around. But when I interact with somebody else's art that's digital, all I'm really looking for is whether or not I can still see the artist at work. So like somebody like John Klassen, who I think is, one of the best illustrators out there right now. He works digitally, but I can tell instantaneously that I'm looking at a piece of work made by John.
Yeah, Peter Brown's the same way.
Peter Brown, same way, exactly. Like, there's just something about the way that it gets constructed that I can still see the artist. Where I start to feel cold about digital art is when I see the computer first and I see the artist second, or not at all.
Yeah. I've been trying to think about how to explain this in a much more succinct, efficient way to illustrators. And I brought this up on the podcast before, and it's still not there yet, my wording. But it's essentially how I see the arts and crafts movement in houses compared to the cookie cutter bullcrap that I see built on freshly purchased farmland. That's the difference. And I'm not saying digital art is the cookie cutter crap.
Yeah.
I'm saying what the public or what we think or what – not society. I don't want to talk in these like broader terms, but – it feels as if everyone, quote unquote, everyone is going in that direction, the cookie cutter. Like, oh, you have to use these programs and with generative AI, it's all starting to look the same. And those of us who still know how to build the arts and crafts house feel like we're becoming the outsider artist. But in fact, we're becoming way more valuable because we know how to do it. And at some point, very soon, and I see signs of this all the time, people are going to get sick of the cookie cutter crap and go like, where's the individuality? Where's the creativity at? Oh, it's over there. I'll go over there. I was looking at your guys' websites. Here comes the sunshine and rainbows and lollipops and stuff. I'm so thankful the two of you exist.
That's awfully nice.
Yeah, that is a nice rainbow.
It just feels as if you guys are carrying the mantle that has been carried by the greats, by all of my personal favorite illustrators. Thank goodness we need artists to do that for this generation, for the following generations. So thank goodness you guys exist. I could not be happier about it. And I don't look at your work and go, oh, I can't draw like that. I'm jealous because you guys are talented, but I'm not I'm not comparing your pen and ink work to mine. I'm thankful yours exists. And I'm excited to do my own.
I think we always looked at those artists with reverence, and we still do look to those artists with reverence. But something's been happening recently where we're losing a lot of these people in the last few years.
Yeah, Jules died a couple years ago.
We lost Jules. We've lost Eric Carle. We've lost Tomie dePaola, who I think is really important to Erin. And suddenly I feel even more of a responsibility lately to not let some of these things go. One of the reasons I turned away from collage years ago is that I was so happy doing it and felt like I was really kind of onto something. But at the same time, I'd pick up one of Eric Carle's books and think like, well, there's somebody has already figured this out. I need to find something that's more mine, whatever that is, which was probably not the right choice for me, but it's a choice I made. And very recently I was thinking like, wow, like all of the Eric Carle work that exists, it exists now and there will never be more at this point. So who's making collage work? Somebody's got to make work this way. And I suddenly felt like maybe there is space for me to exist.
No question.
In that media.
And not because you're Phil Stead and you're Erin Stead. I think any illustrator who has at least a toe dipped in how things used to be, or let's say it this way, because I'm trying to not make this all sound like you guys all need to pull out your rapidograph pens. If we all have, as artists, at least a toe dipped in illustration history, it's so much more informative than to scroll through Instagram and go, oh, I guess I have to do that now.
Yeah. If somebody listening to this podcast can explain to me how to use rapidograph pens, I would
properly.
Yeah.
Oh,
I have tried for
me too.
My whole life, and it's just a never ending.
Just ink everywhere.
Yeah.
I bought 2 sets, one in high school, one in college. They both clogged immediately, and I was too frustrated and lazy maybe to deal with it. So
yeah, we are the same person.
Phil's set right now.
The dead set sitting right in front of us.
Yeah.
Don't throw it away. It's a collector's item. So let's
wait. Yeah. First, hold on. I have something to say in response to that really nice thing that you said about us, but also in response to what Phil's saying, which is that the fun thing about being an illustrator, and this includes I make picture books, but this includes editorial, all kinds of illustration, is that we are storytellers.
Yep.
And this is a skill that we are currently losing, as in my opinion, as a giant culture. Use whatever, large broad brush you want to use there. And it's messing us up because stories are the only way that we get to really connect with each other and learn about each other. I think that when Phil and I are trying to approach our career book per book or page by page or whatever, it's that we're really just trying to make the best story we can, and we are using the knowledge that we have gleaned from people who were better at it than we are. So when someone like you says something that kind, that's great, but I also feel a little bit like, well, you're bringing all those people up because that's who we're stealing from, and so you're right.
Learning from,
right,
leaning on,
and so you're right.
Gently.
But I guess my point is, we really aren't anybody without each other, and so a lot of times the best thing we tell people who are trying to be illustrators or trying to make books is go out and read as much as you can, decide what you like, and also really decide what you don't like. And I think that's what we still try to do.
Hi, illustrators. The illustration department's popular Spring Forward sale is upon us. From March 11th to March 15th, mentorships, workshops, and portfolio reviews are 15% off. Plus, you can choose to receive a 1-month free trial subscription to my best-selling Substack. To take advantage of this rare sale, visit illustrationdept.com/classes. I hope to see you. This has been such an intense conversation that I'm literally out of breath. Just
this is just every day with Phil and Erin.
We'll talk about college basketball.
Change basketball to baseball, and then you'll have me there.
We can talk about baseball.
We can do that.
Yeah.
All right.
It just happens to be basketball season right now.
Justin Verlander back to the Tigers.
Yeah.
Tigers stink. Orioles are awesome. No, I'm kidding. Tigers okay.
Okay, so first of all, Tigers don't stink because that's where we live. But second of all, my second favorite team is the Orioles. So.
Yay. All right. No, the Tigers are in my top 10, just out of respect.
10? Aren't they one of the original 6? I mean, come on.
Were they the original?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I do respect them, because they are historic. And if we're talking about the Dodgers, the Yankees, we'll hear a lot more anger out of my voice. But with Detroit, I'm like, yeah, they're okay. They're cool.
Okay.
I take them.
Okay.
Back to art. The way I see it is the world is building just plain old rectangular, clear glass windows. We are all the stained glass window creators. So in a world of like plain glass windows, let's create stained glass windows. That's what we do. And so we should not be like, oh gosh, there are all these rectangular clear glass windows out there. What are we going to do? What do you mean what are we going to do? We're the ones who are awesome. We're the ones who create the stuff that everyone wants. That's the way I see illustration. Yes, it's scary. I'm not saying it's not scary. Generative AI sucks. But I don't know. I feel way more excited about it than I think most people do.
Maybe this is naive of me, but I'm just not afraid of generative AI.
I'm not either.
What I am afraid of is lost knowledge within the industry.
There's a lot of us who are making sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah. So I feel like, we got into this business really young, and we sort of lucked into certain situations where we were working with people that had huge, vast stores of institutional knowledge just within themselves. Mm-hmm. And we could access that and then aspire to get there ourselves. Mm-hmm. I have noticed a shift in the industry. A lot of people that had worked in publishing for a really long time are moving on with their lives. A lot of those people had really deep, extensive knowledge working with artists like us that work traditionally.
Is Neil Porter retiring?
He is retired. He is retired.
He's already retired.
He is already retired.
He's already retired as of.
I thought he had a. I thought he had
December.
who's heading Neil Porter Books?
Taylor Norman,
who I work with now.
Okay.
So he had been kind of phasing out over the last few years, and we'd been working with Taylor, and then he officially retired just last year.
Got it.
So that's just a concern I have in general, is that what we do is becoming a little bit archaic, and while I believe in it, we also need we can't do this job alone, and we need there's a scaffolding around every bookmaker, editors, art directors, publicists, whomever, mm-hmm. that also need to understand how these things, even something just as simple as when we provide real artwork, getting it scanned or photographed properly and separated properly. Mm-hmm. Those are skills that are being lost, not just within, our own publishing house, but then, there are fewer and fewer actual separators out there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are fewer and fewer people that do original work. Hopefully we'll see a resurgence of this stuff.
I think we will.
Yeah. And I'm more concerned on the spiritual side of things. I think a lot of the best illustrators that we can think of from the past would maybe have face planted in this public facing world. If you are an illustrator right now, it feels like you have to have a zillion followers on some sort of social media platform, and you have to be making mm-hmm. content at a pace that artists can't always keep up with. I certainly can't.
Neither.
And I also worry that a lot of the most creative people who existed in our profession had to be kind of protected. And I think the thing about being an artist or being an illustrator is that you have to make sure that that soft part of you stays soft, stays open to all of these experiences and emotions and all sorts of things. And I think that there was a real generation of editors who were good at finding those soft belly people and allowing them to make books. And I do worry that the pace of things has changed that creative relationship a little bit.
Yeah. The opportunity we had to work with Neil Porter as our editor for years and years, there's almost probably no other thing that's ever happened to us that's allowed us to be more ourselves than that, mm-hmm. because his own editorial philosophy, if I'm going to speak for him a little bit, was that he found interesting people and he allowed them to be themselves.
Yeah.
He would sign up books before they were even close to being books.
Well, I'm an example of that.
Amos McGee was not a book when it was signed
I
up.
wasn't an illustrator.
Erin was not an illustrator. She had not made art for 3 years before she made that book.
I heard him talk about that at a conference many years ago. And yeah, he mentioned that.
And that we have noticed a real shift in how we've had to interact with publishing as we've, had to phase out of working with Neil. Because there are just very few personalities that are willing to take that leap, because it is a big risk.
Well, and the process has changed. The acquisitions process
has changed too, but it's also a risk. I mean, sometimes we kind of pitched an idea for a thing and it really, I believe in them. I still believe in some of these projects artistically, but they were not commercial hits,
I've had that experience. I had sent my book proposal out to a bunch of editors. Still am. The editor wanted to acquire the book, but the group, the acquisitional process, the final review was part of a large group made up of all of the departments. And somewhere along the line, somebody threw a wrench in it and it got pulled after 5 months of thinking I had a book.
Yeah. I've observed this happening more than I'm comfortable with. Mm-hmm. It has changed the way we've pitched projects, and it's brought out a accidental talent of mine that I don't think we all knew I had.
Yeah, Erin has essentially become our agent.
Nice.
I mean, we have a wonderful agent, but
co-agent. We'll say.
Yeah,
Erin has become our co-agent
because so one of the ways I learned the most about my job is that I used to sell children's books. Mm-hmm. And you have to pitch those books to people who want to buy them. I worked in a store where hand selling was all you did. So if a customer came in,
Books Are Magic, or is that Books of Wonder?
Books of Wonder.
Or somewhere else. Books of Wonder. Yeah.
So a customer would come in, you'd have to.
I had Peter on the
say,
podcast.
"Oh yeah, okay."
Many years. It was great. It was in his office, like giant hot pipes on the wall. Like, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
I love Peter.
Yeah,
he's great.
So that store and that community of people who worked at that store, they taught me everything I know. And but one of the things you have to do over and over again is a customer will come in, they have an 8-year-old who likes squirrels, they have a 7-year-old who likes turtles, they have and you would have to find them whatever book you could and pitch it to them. And it turns out
by C.F. Payne.
Yeah.
Squirrels.
Very good. And it turns out I still have that skill. And so I've learned that if we can tell people more about why this book would work once you get it into the hands of the right person, that has worked better than it used to. And that we need to do it a little more aggressively and differently than we were doing in the past. I think there needs to be a shift. You have to sell your book a little more than I think I was used to.
Yeah. I do have a Neil story that I adore. So I was probably at the same conference. I knew he was, never talked to him, knew he was in the industry. I think this was when he was over at Roaring Brook, when did he co-found Roaring Brook? Might have been before that.
He did.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was outside of the hotel, and I, drummed up the courage to go over there and talk to him. And he was looking for a lighter. He had a cigarette, but he didn't have a lighter. And he asked me if I had a lighter, and I didn't. And so we went to like the nearby CVS or something, Rite Aid, and got a lighter. Mm-hmm. And I forgot my toothbrush, so I bought a toothbrush. And on the way, we chatted about books, about life, and it was great. And then I might have had a cigarette with him. I will not confirm nor deny that. And he was just super welcoming and just sort of interested and interesting. He was still is, obviously. It was a great experience. And it just made me feel like, oh, am I part of this? Am I part of this industry? Damn. Okay. Thanks, Neil. So my 9 or 10-year-old self would have absolutely loved a potion of powder and a little bit of magic. It reminds me, here's some other artists that are writers too. It reminds me a little bit of like Italo Calvino folktale. You sprinkle in some like
I love Italo. I can never say that name.
Italo Calvino.
Yeah,
there you go.
Like Domenico Gnoli, who you introduced me to as I was researching, and I shall continue to look him up. There's another artist that you might know about or like. If you don't, look him up. Imero Gobbato. Imero Gobbato. Imero Gobbato. Kind of like, I wonder if he was a contemporary of Domenico. Similar-ish in terms of his pen and ink work. Definitely look him up. But anyway, the point is, like, there's the pen and ink work in this book as well. we probably would have seen in the 60s or 70s. Throw in a little adventure. It's absurd. It's unlikely heroes. It's, flawed but endeared companions. I'm in. I'm 100% in. My 9-year-old Legend of Zelda self just looked at the illustrations and was like, I want to play this game, or read this book. It's your debut middle grade. Why did it take you 7 years? Is it because there are just a couple more words in a middle grade than a picture book?
Well, I started writing this in 2018, so pretty long time ago. I had just finished up a book that I made with Erin called The Purloining of Prince Oleomargarine.
Great title.
Which was a very strange book. It's a 150-page picture book, and I co-wrote it with Mark Twain. So, meaning that Mark Twain left an unfinished manuscript, and it was my job to finish this children's manuscript, and then it was Erin's job to lose her mind for 2 straight years illustrating the thing.
Yeah.
I enjoyed writing it. I enjoyed being able to sort of stretch out a little bit as a writer.
It wasn't really an unfinished manuscript. That's what we would say. But it was more like a story outline with no ending.
Nice.
Yes.
So Phil really had to put on a Mark Twain costume and pretend it was him. Yeah.
95% of the actual words you read are my words.
Yeah.
But the plot line kind of belongs to Mark Twain. And I really enjoyed writing it because I could say things I don't get to say in a picture book. I could just use language in a way that I don't get to use in a picture book. So I thought, well, what if I tried again, but I just shed all the baggage of Twain and allowed myself to just be myself. So I started free writing. I didn't have a story in mind. I had no roadmap for how to write a middle grade book. I have been completely invested and obsessed with picture books my entire career, really since I was 15 years old. Mm-hmm. And I had never really thought about how middle grade books work. I'd experienced them as a reader, but never as a creator.
Typically the chapters go in order, so I guess you missed that lesson.
I missed that lesson. I think I missed more than that lesson.
Excuse me, that's not how that happened anyways.
Yeah, it took a long time because I didn't know what I was doing. There's sort of 2 narratives in this book at the same time. There's the main narration of the story. It's kind of like a heightened fairy tale or fractured fairy tale that you're inside of. But then there's also the second narration that's sort of the story of the creative struggle of making the book itself. And it's a very fictionalized version of that, sort of like a fantasy version of that. But at the same time, it's real. The stumbling blocks that the author is experiencing, the crisis,
the joy,
the many crises of confidence.
But sometimes
the joy,
also
the
gets
euphoria.
Excited, that something goes well. And then the thing that we were really, I think, excited about that happens in the book is that he tries to explain what it's like to lose creative control of the thing you're making.
Yeah, a lot of the book sort of came from this idea that I've had for a long time. I used to have to go to church on Sunday every day with my parents, and we'd listen to the sermon, and then on the way home I would think, like, what if we're getting something wrong here? Like, what if the whole world was created by a benevolent creator, but then the work was done, and now we're just living inside of the work? And what if the creator was benevolent but not perfect, the way that God always gets described? What would that be like? And I started thinking about it in terms of the art that I was making, even as a kid, like 10, 11 years old. I try to make my things perfect, but they aren't perfect. And what if the characters on my page were somehow sentient? They would think that I was omnipotent because I had made them. But I am as deeply flawed as anybody could be, especially at age 10 or 11 as a creator.
There's a Daffy Duck episode in which he starts yelling at the animator, and then the animator erases his bill, and Daffy Duck's like, what the hell, dude?
Yeah, I know that one, yeah. Yeah, so that was kind of like the seed for the meta-narrative of this book. Like, who's really in control once a story gets going? Like, the creator initiates it, but then the story, if it's going to feel true, ends up sort of taking over itself.
Yeah. You hit every button for me. I think just like my 9-year-old self would love it. My 48-year self would love it. There's just so much about it that I appreciate from an illustration standpoint, from a creative writing standpoint, from a fairy tale standpoint. My favorite writer is Isabel Calvino, and it just felt like he's probably like, I'm down.
That makes me really happy. I've had a copy of Calvino's Cosmicomics sitting on my coffee table for, I don't know, the last 2 years. Erin, I'm always bothering Erin by never putting my books away.
It's one of my like 3 or 4 books in my collection that if the house burned down, one of the 3 books I have is his completed work.
Yeah, that would be Albrecht the Wise for me.
100%, yeah. Erin, you were referring to like the noisy world. I think you referred to it as like you're just a drop in the river or a drop in the ocean or something. Mm-hmm. If all of what we're discussing is a river, just a raging river, we can't control it, we're just kind of floating down it. I see you guys as like that island in the middle of the river where you pull off to the side, you take a break from the noise, and then you jump back into the river when you're ready. That's kind of how I see the work you guys do. Well,
thanks.
Trust me, if someone were gushing in my direction, I would be so uncomfortable. So uncomfortable.
It's like Teflon. Like I will immediately forget it. I think that's the only way you can stay a human being.
Kind of.
There have been a few nice things that people have said to me that I will remember. And I do in real time really appreciate it. It's just that if you let that hang with you, I think you become a monster. So you have to just keep moving forward.
Yeah,
but
kind of hold on to it and go, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, that is nice.
Let it go.
But so I truly appreciate it, even though I will forget.
Yeah. I do the same thing with my podcast. People email me and they're like, oh, I really love the podcast for this reason or that reason. And I do truly appreciate them reaching out 100%. Like, thank you so much. Sometimes I feel like my episode is just going out into the void. Mm-hmm. So when I get an email, it reminds me like, okay, people are listening. And then of course, about an hour later, my thoughts sort of drift to, I'm not a good host. My questions are stupid. Mm-hmm. My audio sucks. Like all that crap. Because I think we're creative and that's what we do.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's okay. Anyways, what you said was very nice. And I hope that that's what we can do for people. I love making books for me because of who I am and the work that I make. Mm-hmm. That give people a moment to quiet down for a second. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing that I think we both try to do is just make a book that might feel familiar even if you've never read it. Mm-hmm. Try to make something that already feels like a friend.
Yeah. And I can think of other people's books that have done that for me. You know, I'm going to throw out another name that I think should be a household name, but at this point very much isn't. We were talking about which 3 books you would grab in a fire. Mm-hmm. There's Albrecht the Wise. Another one on that list for me is Natural History by M.B. Goffstein.
Yeah. Okay.
It is the perfect book. Ooh. Anybody that goes out and finds it and is familiar with our work, I think will recognize a kinship.
I'll put the name in the show notes for people to look it up.
It is incredibly spare. It's literally small. Mm-hmm. It's small in both literally and figuratively. You know, it doesn't try to do much, but what it does is creates a space that you can't help but walk inside of and be completely enveloped by the experience of the book once you're in it.
I have a perfect book recommendation. And then Erin, I'm curious to hear if you have one as well. Like Walk Out of a Burning House with this book. My Walk Out of a Burning House children's book is The Biggest House in the World by Lionni. Mm.
Not a bad choice.
Yeah.
It's a perfect children's book.
There are 2 illustrators that I wanted to be when I was in college. Eric Carle was one, Leo Lionni was the other.
Man, Rockwell was it for me and failed miserably. Erin, so what's your Burning House book?
She's staring.
Yeah, I'm staring. I'm thinking about it because I actually think my answer has changed.
She's like, I think it's a sick day for
No.
Miss McGee.
No, I know that one. It's fine.
You notice I haven't really brought it up much this episode, in this conversation.
We've talked about it enough.
No, I mean, well, that's not true.
That made it sound negative.
Yeah,
actually,
no.
We love talking about Amos. But
yes, so do I. I know you do. I know you do. But I do. You guys have. I mean, let's. You've done other things.
Yeah, I think the reason I'm pausing is because the experiences I've had actually reading books with my kid have altered some of the experiences I have reading books before I had a kid. And so there are a few books that I've read with her that I thought would work because I loved them, even as an art student. And then they really did. And I was very pleased about that. So right now I'm thinking of authors, and then I'm thinking of Wallace's lists.
Oh, Wallace's lists.
Yeah. But that's not a building book because it's fancy or necessarily important, but because it's important to me. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. It doesn't have to be important to the whole world.
Yeah.
I mean, collectively, the whole world has pretty bad taste.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's just my opinion. I could be wrong. I will say one thing about Amos McGee. The reason I love that book so much, in addition to everything that we've already discussed, is because the main character is not a child. How old is he? 60? 70?
I think he's
older than that.
North of 70.
80?
Yeah. The character, like what the character looks like, is actually based on an Irish actor.
Although Ollie, our friend, recently interviewed me for his own book, and he was like, he looks just like your dad.
Oh, he does a little
bit. And I was like,
yeah.
oh, you're right. So
I think all of our drawings of people, this is totally unrelated, but related. I think all of any artist who draws a person, like a fairly representational person, you'll see elements of that, either that person or that person's relatives in that drawing, no matter how hard they try.
You also can see it in the dogs that people find for themselves.
I learned that lesson when I worked at Books of Wonder because we would have authors in all the time and illustrators in all the time. And I realized that they would walk in and I would say, "Oh, Mark Teague, you look just like your illustrations." And it was that over and over again.
Nice. His face was beautifully rendered. No, I'm kidding.
One thing that we don't often admit to, but we will on this podcast, is that neither one of us like to draw children.
Yeah.
Which is a real sort of Achilles heel if you're working in children's literature.
Potter. Nope, neither did Beatrix Potter.
So we have done it. We've had books with kids, but it is only if the story really can't function otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, the reason I'm bringing it up is because so many illustrators that I talk to on a day-to-day basis have heard or have been told directly at a conference or indirectly from somebody else or whatever, that you can't create a children's book unless the child or the character is between basically, ages of like 3 and 7.
Yeah. If this was video recorded, you would have seen my rage face turn on. It's one of my least favorite things that people will say. First of all, I don't like it when anybody says this is a topic you can't discuss in picture books.
Too,
this is a style you can't have in picture books. This is an art style. I just think that's...
Let's delete this whole episode unless you and I just talk about that. Sorry, Phil.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll do a separate.
All right, separate. Take 2.
But where was I going with this? Oh, the
rage.
the
Speaking of Amos McGee and rage,
right? Right. Obviously, the takeaway from Sick Day for Amos McGee is
there. It is.
Right. No, the other thing that we forget, and a really clear example outside of picture books, is when Sesame Street first started to exist. Those Muppets that you see, the original ones, they were not kids.
Yep.
They weren't necessarily grown-ups. Some of them sort of were, but they weren't kids. And this idea that a kid can only relate to another kid is, first of all,
ridiculous.
But second of all, it's not always what they want to see when they're trying to navigate the world. They just want a bridge. They want someone to help them understand. And so in Sesame Street, it happened to be a Muppet. And some of those Muppets lived in their own little apartment together. And some of them, were just pretend playing adults.
Right.
But they lived somewhere in this netherworld of not fully adult, not a parent, not fully a kid, just somewhere in between to help them kind of move along.
Yeah.
And the idea that a kid always needs to read about a kid is so shallow.
Agreed. 100%.
And I wish we'd all stop telling people how to make things.
Oh my God. Me too.
One of the reasons I like that I have children as my audience and not grown-ups is that when I walk into a school and I'm, presumably meeting, let's say 300 kids for the first time, and none of them have been introduced to my books beforehand. By the time I leave, I can probably have close to 100% of those kids willing to interact with me on a story that I've made. Now, if my audience were grown-ups and you just put 300 random grown-ups into a room, by the end of, an hour session with them, I might have 10% of them on board with what I'm doing. And it would be the 10% that, I would probably just naturally be friends with anyway. The older we get, the more closed off to experience we become.
Agreed.
You can even see it within the age range that exists in an elementary school. So if I'm talking to sixth graders, I'm going to have a little bit tougher of a time getting everybody on board with me. But the younger and younger I get, the more and more willing kids are to have any sort of experience. So that's why it's so ridiculous that a book like Amos McGee that's really geared, let's say 4 to 6 year old is where it's like, it can go either direction, but that's kind of like the heart of the age range for that book. There's nothing that's not okay for them. As far as what character you'll introduce, the main character could be an octopus and they'd be fine with that. So why wouldn't they be fine with an old man?
I could not agree more. Miss Rumphius. I forgot is that the full title? Barbara Cooney's Miss Rumphius?
Yeah.
I think so. She's not a kid. It's so funny how like people, let's be more specific, children's book publishing professionals will refer to like Miss Rumphius or Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs or what, like there's, countless other books where the main character is an adult and go, that's my favorite book.
Right.
And then they turn around and tell the illustrators who are trying to get into stuff today, oh, you can't
do that.
Work like that.
Yeah.
You can't work like that.
Yeah.
Really? I feel the same way about color. They'll talk about all these favorite books of theirs and all the color palettes are fairly quiet or muted.
Or black and white.
Or black and white. Thank you. And then they turn around and tell illustrators, you can't work like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've even had to deal with that a little bit ourselves.
For me, yeah.
Because Erin's work is always very subtle. But, some books more than others. We did a book called Lenny and Lucy many years ago that the color palette is essentially gray.
Yeah. And then it's got one yellow.
There's some yellow.
And a green.
And a little bit of blue.
There's a yellow, a blue, and a green.
But it's primarily a gray
and
book.
A red. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that one was tricky getting that one across the finish line.
I'm sure it was, but kids don't care. That's the other thing too. And I'm so sorry we're going so long on this, but there's one last thing I wanted to point out here. It just feels as if, again, broad stroke here. So a lot of this is going to be, sort of shrapnel to innocent bystanders or whatever. But it just feels as if it's almost as if the publishing industry sort of forgets for a second how kids interact with things and how they like things. You can take a kid to a freaking museum and show them Roman sculptures, and they're going to go, "Wow, that's amazing." They're going to say, "Well, that's not a child, and it's not illustrated in a naive way. So why should I care?" Like that's not how they perceive the world. I was born in the late 70s, so I grew up with Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Labyrinth, Transformers, on and on. It wasn't until the Goonies showed up, and I was about the same age as the kids in the Goonies. When the Goonies came out, that I saw like kids my age doing a thing that I liked. But before that, it was all adults,
right?
Or robot adults, or dinosaur adults, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just, and that's what I aspired to that. Any kid does that. No kid. Not no kid, but another generalization. But I think most kids look to their older siblings and their parents and old like adults they want to they're curious about what they're up to, not necessarily what their peer is doing.
Yeah, not until later.
Right.
Yeah, I think if you're of a certain age, and then also maybe always, your brain is busy trying to figure out what to keep and what to get rid of.
Yeah.
When you're really small, that keep and get rid of pile gets all mixed up because you're just having too many experiences all at once and everything is new. If the grownups around you don't have the patience to try to help you through that, like sift through that pile of, you can keep this one, you don't have to remember this. Or this is how we do this. This is how we do this one thing that we have to do every couple of months, like go to the dentist or something. Then it can all be shifted into an urgent pile, and that can really mess you up for a while. Mm-hmm. If you're exposed to experiences and different stories from different characters and different people or different historical figures, just as many experiences as you can have with a helper, with some sort of bridge character or person to help you through, then you're so much better off.
Agreed. Wow, I'm glad you guys are on the podcast because we agree on a lot of things.
Yeah. I find that illustrators do, that we're all pretty similar people.
Yeah, it's like we all walk around thinking we're unique, and then we'll meet up with people at a conference, people we've never met with before, and we'll think, oh, you're me.
Right.
Yeah, exact same. We put the same clothes on today.
You're wearing the same side bag as I'm wearing.
Yep.
Yeah, we're awkward in all the same ways.
Nice old Converse shoes that you're sporting there.
Or Vans. You can wear Vans.
Or Vans. Dude, I almost bought a pair of Vans literally 5 days ago. And I never had a pair of Vans in my entire life. And we were at the outlets near where I live and went into the whatever store, shoe store, Famous Footwear or something I think it's called. And anyway, saw a pair of Vans I really liked, and I had them in my hand, was going to buy them, and then was like, I'm too old for this. I can't wear these.
Oh, no.
No. I wear PF Flyers from the Sandlot.
Oh, well, see, the thing is, though, I have really big feet.
I'm sure
and those I would look like a clown if I wore those.
I don't know.
All right.
And
more on that later.
Lean into it, yeah.
All right, well, let's lean into final notes here. So there are illustrators and writers listening to us. And if they're still with us, thank you guys. We'll start with Phil, then Erin. What would be one piece of advice or word of encouragement, word of wisdom, one last thing that you would like to share with them directly?
I've got a couple. I'll keep it to one, but a couple of pieces of advice that like people have given me or I've absorbed over the years that continue to guide me. One is, something you hear in this business a lot. And this is true of any creative field, not just bookmaking, but you hear that you have to have a thick skin. I really think that the exact opposite is true, because who wants poetry written by somebody with thick skin? You actually need somebody that's complete opposite. You need somebody to have like the thinnest skin possible, like so thin that the events of the world sort of pass through you and come out the other side transformed. And if you've got a thick skin, nothing can enter inside of you at all. Mm-hmm. Everything just bounces off of you. And that's the definition of a cynic to me. You can get near to cynicism as an artist, but if you ever actually become a cynic, then you're not an artist anymore.
Okay. Erin?
I wish I would have gone first.
Trying to buy you the time.
Yeah, thanks. When I was in college, I went to a real fancy art school, and I was told in that art school by a couple of professors, and I listened, that I wasn't an illustrator. So I stopped being an illustration major, and I went and became a painting major. And one of the things that got in my head, and the reason I started to listen to that is because at the time when I was in school, there was this real drive to have a style, that you had to have not only an illustration style figured out, but also how to manipulate it into a few different forms so that you were able to sell the work that you made to different types of outlets, so editorial and what have you. Mm-hmm. And this really tripped me up. I was a very adept drawer. I could copy a lot, and I could copy well, but I never could figure out, well, what do they mean? What does that mean for me? I just felt like I didn't really have an identity. I ended up quitting. I studied painting, decided that life really wasn't for me. I didn't understand it. That's kind of a different podcast. And then I just stopped drawing. Decided that I still loved children's literature and wanted to pursue working in publishing, but that I wasn't going to be an illustrator when I grew up. 20-some years later, what I realize now that I was wrong about was that all I had to do was just draw like myself. And it didn't quite fit into the illustration mold that my art school thought that it needed to. It wasn't at all cartoonish or designy in any way. I was still just drawing like myself. That ended up being enough. I think now more than ever, and we kind of touched on this a little, just drawing like yourself is enough. There's a lot of ways we can all make our art all look like everybody else's art. And I think the influence to do that is stronger than it's ever been because the internet flattens things. Mm-hmm. But if we can just figure out, even though it might not be what you think you should even be drawing like, if you can figure out how to make stuff that comes really just from your own hand, in any way that might be, in whatever media that might be, that we're all better off for it.
Find Philip's A Potion, a Powder, and a Little Bit of Magic at your favorite bookseller. Learn more about Erin at erinstead.com. If you find value in this podcast, consider becoming a patron. In return, you can access bonus episodes, receive invitations to our Art Directors After Hours series, and get a 10% off discount code for all ID offerings. Become a patron by visiting patreon.com/illustrationdept. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.